Honorable Federal Minister for Climate Change, Honorable Federal Minister for Information, Honorable Chair, experts, diplomats, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good morning. The learned minister provoked some legal points, innovation. And I think when he said that the water, there is no right over water, if I can develop it further, basically there is no title to water of any state. If you remember, they are called global commons. The SDGs and international law treats space, air, water as a common heritage of mankind. That is exactly what 1982 Law of the Sea Convention tells us, that they are common heritage of mankind. So the waters flowing from the glaciers downwards towards states who could be upper, lower, or multiple states, no state can validly claim title of water. It's a common, it has to be used by all. With this fundamental feature inherent, it is obvious that a water flowing from one country to another can't be stopped or diverted by its very nature. And that is one reason why we come to this conclusion that in all treaties that have been executed between upper and lower riparian, the just use principle or entitlement of use of water by each has been enshrined and codified. The Indus Water Treaty is no exception to it. So what Mr. Meher Ali Shah identified as Article 3, the core obligation, it links up in a jurisprudence sense with this equal use of water and absence of title to any country, to any state, that the water will be allowed to let flow into Pakistan without any interference. And the interference exceptions have been identified. And then, despite that, and what are those exceptions? Of course, despite those exceptions, you will let the water flow. And when you are making any hydro projects, any pondages, then you guarantee a low riparian through an Indus Water Treaty or any similar treaty that, look, we are making this pondage, this hydro project for our use in our territory that we need. There are people who require electricity. There are people for whose agriculture we require that. Don't you worry, your water will continue to flow. So that's the assurance, that's the guarantee implicit in the Indus Water Treaty, and that is why several projects were allowed to happen, and to ensure the engineering drawings were commented upon, discussed, even taken to judicial forums as and when required, but the very project itself was not criticized, was not pushed back by Pakistan. Now the situation has dramatically changed, ladies and gentlemen. In May last year, India says we are holding it in abeyance. Holding in abeyance, from an international law point of view, is an admission of a breach of a treaty. If you say, I'm holding a treaty in abeyance, you're fashioning a terminology to walk away from the core obligations of the treaty. You're identifying a term which is stranger to the water law jurisprudence or even Vienna Convention and the laws of treaty, where either you would suspend or you would terminate, or you would at best not walk out of it, but use the exceptions within to argue your point of view. But if you are saying yourself that we are holding it abeyance to an international law, this is an admission of the breach of a bilateral treaty. For Pakistan, it holds the field, and we use its baseline to comment. That is strategy 1. The strategy 2 is that they are no longer linking this matter to the treaty formulation. The absence of good faith tells us Indians are linking it holistically to other issues that are again extraneous to the treaty. Terrorism. Terrorism is a matter that Security Council is already seized of by virtue of UNSC Resolution 1373, which forces obligations on all member states to counter acts of terrorism through judicial process, legislation, and executive action. And Pakistan has done that post-Mumbai. Most of these people who were suspected, their properties have been seized. They have been struggling, going to courts, asking for permissions to travel and so on. And their reports have been filed by Pakistan to CTC, Counter-Terrorism Committee, consistently. So Pakistan was then evaluated under FATF, and whatever deficiencies in law enforcement mechanism were to counter terrorism, they were fulfilled. Whether they were SCCP framework, State Bank framework, and even Pakistan developed mutual legal assistance law just 2-3 years ago, the standalone MLA law. India, on the other hand, does not have MLA. So if Pahalgam happened, they only have one provision in the Criminal Procedure Code entitling them to send requests to Pakistan for investigation or for cooperation in investigation. If Pahalgam, when happened, the true course of action available to them was to write a letter to the state of Pakistan pursuant to 1273 and under Section 19 of the Mutual Legal Assistance Act of Pakistan, insisting that Pakistan provides relevant information, joint investigation, or whatever information that they had, pass it on to us and say, cooperate. Had we not cooperated, which we couldn't, we had to, whatever that meant at that point in time. But they chose, instead of lawfare, warfare.